Hi, everybody. Happy Saturday. We are on day 14 of our Pray and Go 30-day challenge. Today, we are praying for our pastors again. Okay. It has been 10 days since you first prayed for your pastor. Pastors need prayer consistently. Let's look at some more reasons why prayer is so important. James is a pastor in Tennessee. He has served his church for 9 years. Like any church, his congregation has a mixed bag of blessings and challenges. He deeply loves the members. He expresses and demonstrates that love often. The day I spoke with James was one of the most challenging days for him. He told me the story of Rick and how he had come to church 5 years ago. Rick and his wife were close to divorce. Pastor James told me, I spent hours counseling both of them. I referred them to a marriage counselor as well. It was time consuming, but it was worth the effort. The marriage made it. I was incredibly grateful for a number of reasons, but particularly because they had 3 children under 8 years old. James mentioned how he had invested countless hours mentoring Rick over the next few years. I spent more time with Rick than any other church member. Again, I counted my time with him as a great investment, a blessing worthy of the effort. Then James began to speak slowly. Rick started attending church less frequently about a year ago. I would text or call him fairly regularly, but he became less responsive. Then, about 2 weeks ago, he emailed me to tell me that he and his family were moving to another church because they weren't getting fed at our church. The pastor was crushed. Rick had never given any indication that he was unhappy at church. He even called James his best friend, and now he was gone. The only person the pastor had given the most time to was gone. In ministry, that's sometimes how things go. In the course of a week, a pastor might celebrate a person becoming a follower of Christ, deal with a tragic suicide, receive an encouraging note, lead a contentious business meeting, rejoice at the birth of a child, and receive a hateful and anonymous letter of criticism. It's an emotional roller coaster. When someone asks me if they should become a pastor, I respond, only if you absolutely know you have been called by God. You should not even think of doing it in your own power. The 24/7 job. Pastors hear regularly, I would love your job. You only work for an hour a week. Though the oft repeated lines are meant to be funny, most pastors find little humor in them. They know that many people see their work as light and undemanding. To the contrary, most pastors work long and often weary hours. They take little time off. In a church answer survey of pastors, many said they had interrupted a family vacation to return home to lead a funeral. Some pastors expressed deep regret for this because their wife and children were deeply hurt. Many pastors are torn between caring for their church members and taking time off for their own families. Some church members want pastors to spend more time doing counseling. Others want them visiting nursing homes and shut-in members and hospitals. Some members expect pastors to connect with unchurched people several hours every week. Still, other members demand their pastor keep 40 hours per week of office time, pushing visitation and other responsibilities to after hours. Earlier, I mentioned a pastor who told me that he had spoken with a pastoral search committee member who told him to anticipate working 120 hours a week. Not surprisingly, he didn't take that job. In most cases, the work expectations of pastors are high. If a church has 200 members, the pastor has 200 people who think he works for them. And that doesn't include the expectations of people outside of the church. In a study we conducted several years ago, our research team found that pastors of mostly healthy churches spend about 20 hours per week in sermon preparation. Keep in mind, those hours are above and beyond all the expectations noted thus far. For sure, pastors need blocks of uninterrupted time to prepare sermons, but it doesn't always work that way. In fact, it rarely works that way. Some major interruption will take place It may be as insignificant as someone dropping by to have a chat, or it may be the unexpected death of a family member of the church. Still, the pastor must get the sermon prepared. Think about it. Pastors not only have to prepare a sermon every week, but most pastors also have to prepare around 50 sermons a year. The ministry is never ending. The challenges are always there. So why have I given you this brief overview of challenges of being a pastor? Simply stated, I want you to know how to pray for your pastor. If you and your church are to become vehicles of the Great Commission obedience, your pastor needs to lead the way. And your pastor needs strength, wisdom, and God's protection. You need to pray for all of these and more for your pastor. A Great Commission church is usually led by a Great Commission pastor. Church members follow the lead of a Great Commission pastor, but the enemy will do anything to his circumscribed power to hinder a pastor's work. Such is the reason prayer is so vital. Of course, you can feel free to pray for your pastor in any direction you felt led. Let me suggest a few areas that pastors mention the most. Pray for wisdom for the pastor. The decisions pastors must make are numerous. Some are minor, but some have major consequences. Pray for your pastor to have right priorities, because if the constant requests and demands that pastors receive, they often respond to the most vocal demand rather than to the ones of the greatest importance. Pray for your pastor's family. Spouses and children often feel the burden of being a part of a pastor's family. They often sense the eyes of those looking in the glass house, and many of them are hurt and lonely. Pray for your pastor's sermons. This includes sermon preparation time as well as the actual delivery of the sermon. More people see and hear the pastor in his relatively short period than at any other time of the week. Pray for your pastor's emotional, physical, and spiritual stamina. The work of a pastor's ministry is demanding and it can be exhausting. Pastors who are tired are pastors who may get into trouble. Pray for your pastor's Great Commission leadership. For sure, we are taking these 30 days to challenge you personally to be a Great Commission Christian, but God intended for Christians to do most of their ministry in the local church. You will be a stronger Great Commission Christian if your church is committed to evangelism. Your church will be a stronger Great Commission church if your pastor is committed to evangelism too. Such is the primary reason we are asking you to pray for your pastor today. By the way, there is nothing wrong with praying for your pastor every day. So I know I mentioned that our pastors were off on vacation, so they got a little break and went to spend time with family. But I hope that their week, their time off, their couple weeks that they had off was refreshing, and that they weren't bothered with stuff back at the core that might have needed to be handled, and that as they come back, that they are well rested and can dive right in. But I pray that we as a church can come alongside our pastors and make sure that we are supporting them in every way that's possible that we as members of the church can. And I pray that you are doing the same for your church and core. All right, have a great rest of your Saturday.